But every Wednesday, we're also joined by the Hall of Famer and my dad, Marty Brennaman. Look at this shot behind you right now. My, oh my, oh my. Where are you right now, Dad? That looks unbelievable.
Well, let me tell you one thing. Had it not been for Amanda, you would not have gotten this shot. You would have gotten shot of a bunch of poles and just crap. But we have set this thing up. We've worked our butt off this morning to get this thing right, and thank God that she's able to do it so you guys can get a feel of the island of Bonaire in the Caribbean and check the water out. I mean, you've never seen anything more beautiful as far as this water is concerned.
So you're down there on this Reds cruise. You've been going on that thing, what, 30, 35, 40 years, what?
This is a 38.
Unbelievable. And it used to be, Dad, in the old days, you got some of the current players. I don't know if you have any of them anymore, but you certainly get some of the former big-time stars of the Reds, and that continues now on this one, right?
Well, big time would be loosely put. We have Jack Billingham with us. We have Jim Maloney with us. We have one of the funniest human beings in the history of baseball or any other venue or occupation on earth, and that would be Dimitri Young.
Yep.
And me. I'm the lesser of the evils. And Joe Oliver, pardon me. Joe Oliver's a part of it. And obviously Joe attracts a lot of interest because of his base hit in Game 2 of the World Series in 1990 off Dennis Eckersley. And so it's been a nice group. We traveled to Aruba. We have traveled to Curacao, and then here in Bonaire, and then we're at sea 4 days. So it's a pretty nice cruise.
Well, that's really, really nice. Weather looks great. Water looks beautiful. You've got the donning the what is that? That shirt. That's made by who? I've seen that logo before.
What shirt?
The one you have on right now. I mean, what would I be talking about? Some dude walking down by the lighthouse down there?
Huh?
Who would I be talking about? Some dude wearing a shirt in that lighthouse behind you down there?
How can I? You want me to turn around and look? I'm going to let you see it. Wait a
No,
minute.
I'm talking about your shirt. That's a big league shirt. Look at that.
Here's the town now.
I think Tracy's a bit jealous.
That's big time. When you go down there, do people recognize Marty Brennaman like they do when you're walking around in Kroger and UDF and all that kind of thing?
That would be a big old no. That would not happen. No. That would not happen.
On the boat, I'm assuming, I mentioned at the outset, I have on my Ohio University green and white after just demolishing Miami of Ohio last night. Some of my favorite moments with your longtime partner and our dear friend, Joe Nuxall, going back and forth with the old left-hander about Ohio University playing Miami and who would win the game. And it's become a regular occurrence that OU just dominates Miami.
Yeah, well, you know what I find interesting about all that stuff you were talking about before you got me on? If Miami had reversed that score and won last night, that OU sweatshirt you got on would still be in the drawer at home.
Well, so what?
Front runner.
Guys, have I been on the OU bandwagon all year long or not?
Yeah, you have.
I've been on the OU bandwagon all year long. When they went on the road and they played Penn State and they played Iowa State, all these big-time games getting ready for conference play, I said just look out. When OU gets back in the
What's
MAC,
OU's record?
they are 7-3, won 5 in a row, sitting in first place in the Mid-American Conference.
Was the game in Athens or in Oxford?
It was in Oxford, and it was just a disaster for Miami. It's all you can say.
Were you there?
No, I was not. Paul Fritzner suggested we go up there to the game last night.
And you said no.
Well, I couldn't. I had too much going on at home, and so, that's okay. I'm going to get to a basketball game sometime this year. And
Can I address this topic to Paul for a second?
Of course.
Sure.
Paul, had you invited him to go see Ohio State in Oxford, he'd have been there.
I have a feeling you're right on that one, Marty.
Yep.
What did you think about TCU being ranked number
I think
4 now?
I think it's spectacular. I really do. Obviously they can't. They're in much the similar situation as UC was last year, because I think the powers that be don't want schools like UC or TCU or schools like that to be amongst the Final Four. So I don't think they can stub their toe between now and the end of the season. But if they were to run the table the rest of the season, now a very short season, it would be off. You couldn't keep them out. They'd have to be in the Final Four. And I think what they've done behind that quarterback, Max Duggan, spectacular, and they're fun a team to watch play.
They are. They're really fun to watch. Have you had a chance, and I don't know if you have or not, I would imagine the answer is yes. Have you had a chance to have any communication with Dusty Baker since winning the World Series?
I just text him. That's all. I text him and he texts me back, and that's been the extent of it. I didn't want to bother the heck out of him. In fact, I didn't even send him a text until 2 days after the World Series ended, because I knew he'd been inundated, and he responded right back. And I'm still basking in his glory, as I think a lot of people are, over the fact that he won the thing and won it convincingly after they trailed 2-1. There was no question who had the best baseball team once the dust had settled in Houston. And I couldn't be happier for anybody outside of a relative for him to have the success that he's had, and is finally lit the candle on top of the cake once and for all.
I had some text communication with him briefly yesterday. We're trying to get him to be part of the big interview, and
right.
He said he would be happy to do it. But today, after yesterday, he had a meeting with the owner, Jim Crane, down there with the Astros, and the general manager. There was a lot of dissension, and exactly who it was between or among, I'm not sure any of us is exactly sure. But there seemed to be some things going on there that would not be in concert with a team during the year that was dominant, first place in their division almost the entire year, all of this taking place before the World Series. Do you think that he should, and I know that you're not going to make decisions for Dusty Baker, but do you think he should or will continue to manage?
Well, the manager, the owner, Jim Crane, came out yesterday and said he's back next year.
Yeah.
So, I got mixed emotions about that, Tom. He's been struggling like the dickens to win a world championship, and he's done it. I don't think anybody will ever throw any charity benefits to raise funds for anything that Dusty Baker might need. I think he's extremely well off. And if there was ever a scintilla of doubt that he would be in the Hall of Fame, he put that to rest by winning a series. So I don't, other than still has a fire burning in his stomach. So okay, now I've finally gotten one. I want to go try and win two. And let's face it, he's got a pretty good baseball team coming back next year. Yep. It's not a case of the personnel is going to change, and you know what happens when that. Most of those people that were productive or were on that roster this year are going to be back next year. I don't know. It's like Tom Brady, although Brady's situation is much more exaggerated given the fact he's won all the Super Bowls. But I'm sure there's something else that still drives Dusty Baker, and that being the case, if he wants to come back, and I know he does, then God bless him for it. Maybe make it back-to-back World Series wins.
You went through this and I used to have this conversation on a semi-regular basis with Harry Carey when I worked with Harry in Chicago. And every blue moon, the topic would come up about retiring. And he used to say all the time, he says, there's no way I'm retiring. He says, there's no chance. It keeps me vibrant, keeps me young, keeps me alive, keeps me moving, all those sorts of things. You were still alive and vibrant and still moving and all those kinds of things. You have been able to adjust to retirement very, very well. You know Dusty well. He's got a lot going on outside of baseball. But Dad, I got to tell you, what little I know of Dusty, he strikes me as the kind of guy, and you mentioned he's going to be back next year, but he strikes me as the kind of guy with all the other things he has going on in his life that baseball is by far, and being a baseball manager, it is by far, outside of his family, the number one most important thing in his life?
No question whatsoever. I mean, he owns a winery. He is invested incredibly well. Like I said, he's taken care of his future. But I don't think there's whatever is second is such a distant second that you can't see it in terms of his passions outside of his family. And that's the reason why I said if it's important for him to be back, and I know he's still a vibrant, vivacious, energetic kind of guy, as long as he's got his health, and this is something that really has an overwhelming appeal for him to come back rather than walk away with a world championship. I'm going to roll the dice and try to do it again. I'm happy for him. I think baseball is better off for having Dusty Baker involved in it. And so if he wants to come back, I'm good for that without any question whatsoever.
Let's shift gears here a second to the Reds. And I know that you're not privy to all the inside information and everything going on down there and what they're going to do or not going to do. And we've said before here, you are still a member of the Reds staff. And so, we're not going to get into picking apart this, or this. But knowing you have a stable of what appears to be really good young starting pitching, we saw a lot of that this year, Lodolo, Hunter Green, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think – I wonder who they're going to put on the field besides Stevenson, India, Farmer, and Votto. Do you suspect that they go out and start making moves like the Tommy Phams of the world again, waiting on these young minor league players? Or do you think, they're going to bring back some guys that played last year that were just okay, if not below okay at best?
Well, I don't think they can. I agree with what you say about pitching. I think they just have to do some adjustment as far as pitching is concerned. I think they're casting their lot on the Hunter Greens and the Nick Lodolos and the Graham Ashcrafts and maybe a guy like Connor Overton and some other people to give them a relatively solid rotation, albeit a young one. And I think that given the number of people they had who were not available to them this past year, like T.J. Antone and Lucas Sims and people like that were on the DL almost virtually the entire year. They've got some guys that can help that bullpen immediately and make it a much better bullpen, which is something I think they have to do. But having said that, and that's all about pitching, I don't see how they're going to score a whole lot of runs, to be honest with you, unless they go out and come up with something better than a Tommy Pham. Do I think they'll do that? I have my doubts because I still think that they're looking toward reducing the payroll even more in 2023 than they operated under in 2022. And I don't care how good your pitching is, and I bring up a prime example of that, and that was a Reds team that lost 100 games back in the early 80s. You go back and you look at that team's pitching staff, they had an ERA, I believe, of somewhere between 340 and 350. So their pitching was pretty good. They could not score runs, and they lost 100 games, 101 games, whatever it was. I think they have to address the offense, and I think they have to do it with some faces that we're not familiar with, because if they're going to continue to experiment, and I put that in quotes, with people like Jose Barrero and Aristides Aquino, I don't care how many home runs they hit. They hardly ever make contact, and their strikeout numbers are incredibly high. I just think, and don't discount the possibility now they couldn't trade Kyle Farmer, because I think Kyle Farmer would have some appeal. And I'm, like I said, I still think they're going to lower their payroll even more than it was this year. And so I think they're in a heck of a quandary. If they're going to go out and try to produce a team that will show an improvement over this past season, and God knows it can't get any worse, I don't think, then they've got to do something about their offense. And how they're going to do that, I have no idea.
We have an entire winter to talk about this, but I would imagine it's passed through your thoughts, maybe not frequently, certainly not. But this is the final year of Joey Votto's contract, the 10-year deal he signed for $250 million, I think it was. This is the final year of that deal. Now, the Reds do have an option to pick up for the following year. There's no way they're going to pick up that option for that kind of money. I think we all agree on that. One, do you think there should be, I'm not going to call it a goodbye tour because Votto has already said that after watching some other guys around the league, he thinks he can continue to play and wants to continue to play. He's got to come back from this very serious injury. And he's rehabbing that, no doubt, 24/7. That's who he's all about. But how do you think this season is going to play out? Not necessarily from a production standpoint. I'm talking about from a fan standpoint, an organization standpoint, an emotional standpoint for Joey Votto in 2023. Any guess on that?
Well, I think from an emotional standpoint, it's going to be a tough year for a lot of Reds fans who are dyed-in-the-wool Joey Votto fans and have been forever. I don't know. He thinks he can bounce back and attributes the year he had more or less to not one but two injuries that have since been repaired, and that he will bounce back and have a big year next year. But at the same time, as long as he stays healthy and doesn't have to deal with the problems he had to deal with this past year, he's going in that lineup every single day, whether he's hitting 315 or he's hitting 215. It's not going to make any difference, and they're going to continue to hit him in a run-producing situation, and that's the way it's going to be. And so I think that this is a guy who has tremendous confidence in himself and the ability, even at a rather advanced age for baseball players and being productive, to bounce back and have the kind of year that make people turn the clock back to years of greater productivity that Joey Votto certainly can put his name next to. But I think there's a lot of things up in the air about Joey Votto. I cannot imagine, as you said, they've got a $7 billion buyout or whatever you want to call it at the end of this $25 billion 2023 coming up, and they will certainly not, I would not think, extend him with a contract beyond the end of the 2023 season. I don't know. It's going to be a tough situation, but at the same time, I really truly believe, and I say this publicly, and I'm not ashamed of saying it, when people, that are huge Joey Votto fans, so great that they have no objectivity, and they talk about Hall of Fame and first ballot Hall of Fame. For one thing, I'm not certain, 100% certain, that he's a Hall of Fame player to begin with. I think he's had too many down years, but I would bet the ranch that he will not be a first ballot Hall of Fame. The one thing he's going to have going for him when that 5-year period goes away and he's eligible is he's going to have the kind of numbers over a career that the analytic junkies lose their minds gloriously over. A lot of walks, great on-base percentage, and I think that will enhance his chances of being in the Hall of Fame, and it will depend upon what kind of class that he has, the competition he would have if he has aspirations of being a first-ballot Hall of Famer. The whole thing, it creates a very interesting situation, but you can bet the ranch whether he's producing in 2023 on a daily basis or he's not producing. If he stays healthy, he's going to be at first base the entire season.
All right. Speaking of Hall of Fame, it's the last thing I'm going to ask you about because I am really scratching my head. I think it was John Heyman in New York who wrote this column a couple of days ago. I don't know if you saw it. But when they got down to the final 8 or 10 guys on the Hall of Fame ballot this year, Rafael Palmeiro is on that list. Sammy Sosa is not on that list. Now, I only bring those two names up, and I'm just, following Heyman's lead on this thing. No credit to me. Palmeiro was caught cheating. He lied to Congress. The list goes on and on and on and on. Okay? He had an incredible career. I mean, the guy had 500 home runs. He had over 3,000 hits, and there aren't a handful of those guys in the history of baseball. Great player. Sammy Sosa, while many people believe he may have been involved in performance-enhancing drugs, it's never been proven. There's never been a test that he's failed, none of those kinds of things. And there's no doubt his numbers warrant going to the Hall of Fame. How does that happen while Palmeiro is in and Sosa is out?
I think it's strictly a personal feeling. It would be interesting for John Heyman to come back and write an addendum to that piece and explain exactly the question you have, because if Paul is in John's mind among the top 10 that I'm a son of a gun, then you tell me why Sammy Sosa isn't. I don't understand it. But I will say that I don't know. I'm firmly of the belief, Tom, that a lot of guys that are in the Baseball Writers Association allow their personal preferences to come into play. A guy may have made them mad or refused to do an interview at one time. So I don't care how good a career he is. I thought he was a jerk, and I'm not going to put him on my ballot. And I believe that there are people around here like that. I truly do. I don't know. It's hard to. If you're going to put them all in, and if my memories serve me correctly, Bonds was there, Clemens was there.
Yep.
Palmeiro, you mentioned. Sammy wasn't. Kurt Schilling, for other reasons, was also on that list. If you're going to have all those guys in and don't have Sammy Sosa in there, something's wrong. Wrong. I don't understand that.
I don't understand it either. Well, what do you got planned today? Are you getting off the boat, or are you just sitting out there on the deck and enjoying the sunshine and a cocktail or two? What do you got going on?
We're gonna go out and walk the town a little bit. Try to find a Christmas ornament, because we have our Christmas tree is adorned with Christmas ornaments of all the places we've been around the world, and we're gonna do that. Then I don't know what we'll do. We might lay out on the deck, get a little bit more sun. I've got about as much as I can handle, but we may do that and read my book. And, it's been a very, very relaxing time, and we've had a wonderful time with our good friends Jack and Cheryl Matthews and Rusty and Renee Frankel and all the players I told you about. We've had a good time. This is a great cruise, 38 years, already scheduled for one in 2023. And hopefully it'll continue, thanks to my good friend Herb Rosenfeld and the folks at Provident Travel.
Yep. All right. Well, enjoy it. We are jealous and envious, even though it's a beautiful sunny day here in Hamilton, Ohio, but it ain't the Caribbean.
The regret I have about this particular session is I've not had a chance to publicly say hello and how is my good friend Casey doing?
I'm doing great, Marty. I'm doing really good. Me and Paul wanted to show you something. I'm going to zoom in here. Let me get my camera all set up here. All right, hang on.
There we go.
You see this?
You see what those are,
What,
Dad?
that bobblehead?
No, the baseball
cards. The
There.
baseball
Oh,
cards.
the baseball card. You got Tracy Jones there.
Yeah, what do you think of those? What do you think of those cards?
Well, it's weak is what it is. It's really weak. He has a certain pallor about his skin that looks like they just dug him up. But I want you guys, when you have him on again Thursday, right, Tom, or today?
Yep.
No, Thursday.
Yep.
I was watching. There is a documentary about Nolan Ryan on Netflix, which is a spectacular piece. And I say that in all seriousness. I always thought, he was one of the great pitchers of all time. But after watching this thing, you just scratch your head and have a hard time coming to grips with how a guy can hold, or at one time held, 51 major league pitching records. They have a lot of quick cuts in that documentary of doing what Nolan did best, and that's striking people out. Lo and behold, what pops up? But Tracy Jones standing there, striking out and looking like a washerwoman in the process. He wanted to get out of that batter's butt. He swung at a pitch that he could not have hit with an ironing board that was up and away, and almost fell down, but couldn't wait to get back to that dugout. I had to rewind it to make sure it was him, and it was. So just if you get a chance to remember, just run that by him a bit when you all have him on Thursday.
Well, fellas, what we're going to do is we're going to edit that clip right there by my dad, and before Tracy Jones comes on the air tomorrow, we will run that clip.
Absolutely.
All right.
Well, now I'm trying to remember where it was exact. I think it was
Well,
more
I'll tell
toward.
you, he'll tell you that may have happened. He'll admit that, but he'll tell you that I don't know if it was that game or not, but there was another game where he hit a rocket off Nolan Ryan, and he likes to talk about that.
Well, okay, let him talk about that rocket, but also watch it look like it was embarrassing. Is what it was. I mean, you can strike out with a tremendous amount of class and maintain, your balance and look where the swing is picture perfect. You just couldn't catch up with the pitch. Not in this case. Now, you all got to get that and run it by him tomorrow.
All right, fellas, we'll do that.
We can do that.
All right. Dad, thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of the trip. Be careful. Godspeed ahead.
All right, pal. We love you and give our best to Polly and Ella and Luke.
We'll do it. We love you too. Absolutely. Ella's on her
All
way
right,
to
pal.
Austin, Texas on Friday for the big one down
Big
in
football
Austin.
game.
TCU v.
That's a big
Texas Longhorns. We got some clowns on
Be
this
a
chat
major
room.
step.
We got a lot of clowns, including my good friend and yours, Sir Boy Wonder, who says, unfortunately, I
I'm
think
sure.
Texas wins this weekend. You used to be my friend, Sir Boy Wonder. You used to be my friend. Dad, have fun.
All right, pal. We love you.
We love you too.